Please, don't let them find me. Evelyn Ashford barely recognized her own voice as she stumbled through the freezing forest beneath the blood moon. Rain soaked through her thin gray cloak, turning the fabric heavy against her skin while icy wind clawed through the pine trees around her. Somewhere far behind, wolves were howling. Not pack wolves. Rogues. The sound echoed across the mountains like a warning from the dark itself. Her lungs burned with every breath. Branches scraped her arms as she pushed deeper into the woods, slipping over wet stones and tangled roots. Only 3 hours earlier, she had stood inside the Mooncrest ceremonial hall, wearing white silk and silver flowers in her hair. 3 hours earlier, she had still believed she belonged somewhere. The memory hit her like cold steel. I reject you, Evelyn Ashford. Alpha Damon's voice had carried through the crowded hall with brutal clarity. The moon goddess made a mistake. Hundreds of wolves had watched in silence as the bond snapped between them. She still felt it now, deep inside her chest. A hollow ache that refused to fade. Some had looked away in pity. Others smiled behind raised glasses of wine. One woman had actually laughed when Evelyn's knees buckled beneath her. Rejected Luna. Broken Luna. Useless. The words followed her even now, chasing her through the storm. Thunder rolled overhead. Evelyn pressed a shaking hand against the tree beside her, fighting to stay upright. Her body felt weak after the ceremony. Rejection always hurt Omegas more deeply. Everyone knew that. Yet Damon had shown no hesitation when he cast her aside in front of the entire pack. His new chosen mate had stood beside him wearing crimson silk, her hand wrapped proudly around his arm before the ceremony had even ended. Evelyn swallowed hard and forced herself forward again. She couldn't stop moving. Not tonight. Another howl split through the forest. Closer this time. Her heartbeat stuttered. Rogues rarely crossed into Mooncrest territory unless something had driven them desperate. Starving wolves. Banished wolves. Dangerous wolves with no loyalty to pack law. She glanced over her shoulder, panic tightening her chest. When shadows moved between the trees nearly 50 yards behind her, they were tracking her scent. No. Her whisper disappeared into the wind. She tried to run faster, but exhaustion dragged at her legs. The muddy slope beneath her boots suddenly gave way. Evelyn gasped as she slid down a steep embankment, crashing hard against the frozen ground below. Pain shot through her shoulder. For a second, the world spun around her in darkness and rain. Then silence fell. Not normal silence. The kind that made every instinct inside her scream. Slowly, Evelyn lifted her head. Tall figures emerged from the trees above her. For rogues. Massive men dressed in dark leather, their glowing amber eyes fixed directly on her. One of them smiled. Look what we found wandering alone, he murmured. Evelyn's pulse hammered painfully. She pushed herself backward across the wet ground until her shoulders struck a fallen log. There was nowhere left to run. Another rogue tilted his head slightly, scenting the air. Confusion flickered across his scarred face. Wait, he muttered quietly. Do you smell that? The others fell still. Evelyn frowned, terrified. Then she noticed it too. A different scent drifting through the storm. Cold pine. Smoke. Winter air before snowfall. Powerful. Ancient. Every rogue around her suddenly tensed. Fear flashed across their faces so quickly, she almost missed it. A low growl rolled through the forest shadows behind them. Deep. Dangerous. Not human. The rogues spun around instantly. Trees trembled as something massive moved between them. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. Two silver eyes appeared first, glowing through the darkness like moonlight cutting through fog. Then the enormous black wolf stepped forward silently from the storm. The massive black wolf stepped fully into the pale moonlight, his dark fur glistening beneath the freezing rain, while silence crashed through the forest like a living thing. Evelyn could not breathe. Every rogue around her had gone completely still. Fear rolled off them so sharply she could almost taste it in the air. The wolf was enormous. Bigger than any she had ever seen inside Mooncrest territory. His silver eyes locked onto the rogues with terrifying focus, calm in a way that felt far more dangerous than rage. One rogue slowly stepped backward. That is impossible, he whispered. Another shook his head quickly. The king is supposed to be in the south. King. Evelyn's pulse skipped painfully. Before she could process the words, the black wolf growled again. Low. Controlled. A warning. The rogues exchanged nervous glances. Then one of them forced a laugh that sounded weak even to his own ears. "It is only one wolf," he muttered. "We outnumber him." Nobody moved. The black wolf took one slow step forward. Snow and mud crunched beneath his massive paws. The rogue closest to Evelyn swallowed hard before finally backing away another step. Then another. Suddenly the entire group retreated into the trees almost at once, disappearing into the storm without another word. Evelyn stared after them in disbelief. Rogues did not scare easily, yet they had fled from him like prey escaping a wildfire. Silence settled over the forest again except for the steady sound of rain against branches. The wolf remained motionless. Watching her now, Evelyn's breath trembled in her chest. Up close, his eyes were not cold the way she expected. They were sharp, intelligent, ancient somehow. The black wolf lowered his head slightly, as if studying her. Then pain flashed across his expression. He stumbled. Evelyn blinked in surprise as the massive creature shifted sideways against a tree, breathing heavily. Dark blood stained the fur along his shoulder. Her fear loosened just enough for instinct to take over. "You are hurt." The words escaped before she could stop them. The wolf watched her carefully. Rain dripped from his fur in silver streams beneath the moonlight. Slowly, painfully, he stepped backward into the shadows between the trees. Evelyn frowned. "Wait." He turned away. For 1 second, she thought he might disappear entirely into the storm. Then his body suddenly shifted. Light rippled through the darkness. Bones cracked softly beneath the sound of rain. Evelyn gasped as the enormous wolf transformed into a man standing nearly 6.5 feet tall beneath the trees. He wore black clothing soaked from the storm, his dark hair falling damp against his forehead. Blood stained one sleeve near his shoulder. Even injured, he radiated power so intensely it made the cold air feel heavy around him. His silver eyes lifted toward her. "You should not be alone out here." His voice was deep and rough, carrying the quiet authority of someone used to being obeyed instantly. Evelyn pushed herself upright slowly. "Neither should you." One corner of his mouth almost moved. Not quite a smile. "Fair point." He leaned briefly against the tree behind him. Very controlled. Very steady. Yet Evelyn noticed the slight tension in his breathing. The wound was worse than he wanted her to believe. Thunder rolled again overhead. The stranger glanced toward the forest where the rogues had vanished. "More of them will come once the scent trail returns." Evelyn's stomach tightened. Why were they following me? His gaze lingered on her face for a second too long. "I do not know yet." Yet. The word unsettled her. Rainwater dripped from Evelyn's hair into her eyes as cold wind swept through the trees. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying unsuccessfully to stop shaking. The stranger noticed immediately. Without speaking, he removed the heavy black coat from his shoulders and handed it to her. Warmth still clung to the fabric despite the storm. Evelyn hesitated. "I cannot take this." "You are freezing." His tone left little room for argument. Slowly, she accepted the coat and slipped it around herself. The scent of pine and winter smoke surrounded her instantly. Strange comfort spread through her chest before she could stop it. The man studied her reaction carefully. "What is your name?" "Evelyn." Her voice came out quieter than intended. "Evelyn Ashford." Something flickered across his expression at the surname. Recognition, maybe. Then it vanished. "I am Cale." He did not offer more than that. Another distant howl echoed through the mountains. Closer than before. Cale's jaw tightened instantly. His eyes darkened toward the forest. "We need shelter now." Evelyn looked around nervously. "There is an abandoned ranger cabin about half a mile north." Cale nodded once. "Stay close to me." The way he said it sent an unfamiliar warmth through her chest. Not command. Protection. As they started moving through the storm together, Evelyn did not notice the strange silver glow briefly flickering beneath the skin near her collarbone. The abandoned ranger cabin appeared through the storm nearly 20 minutes later, hidden between towering pine trees at the edge of a frozen creek. Most of the roof had collapsed years ago, but one side of the structure still stood against the mountain wind. Warm light from the blood moon filtered through broken boards, casting pale silver shadows across the snow. Evelyn wrapped Cale's coat tighter around herself as they approached. Her legs ached from exhaustion. Every step through the mud and freezing rain had drained what little strength remained after the rejection ceremony. Cale walked slightly ahead of her, silent and alert despite the injury in his shoulder. He barely seemed affected by the storm anymore. The closer they got to the cabin, the more Evelyn noticed something strange about him. The forest reacted to his presence. Wolves hidden deep in the mountains had gone quiet. Even the wind itself felt calmer around him somehow. Cale pushed the damaged cabin door open carefully. The inside smelled faintly of old cedar and smoke long faded by time. A rusted lantern sat near the stone fireplace beside stacks of decayed blankets. Evelyn stepped inside first, relief washing through her at the sight of shelter. "At least it is dry," she whispered. Cale remained near the doorway, listening to the storm outside for several seconds before finally closing the door behind them. The sound immediately softened the howling wind. Silence settled around them. Real silence this time. Evelyn suddenly became aware of how close they were standing. Rainwater dripped slowly from Cale's dark hair onto the wooden floor. His black shirt clung to his broad shoulders beneath the dim moonlight spilling through the cracked roof. The injury near his shoulder had soaked through the fabric completely now. Evelyn frowned. "Sit down." Cale raised an eyebrow slightly. That sounded suspiciously like an order. "You are bleeding through your shirt." His gaze dropped briefly to the wound before returning to her face. "It will heal. Not if you ignore it." For the first time since meeting him, something softer flickered through his silver eyes. Amusement, maybe. Quietly, he moved toward the fireplace and sat against the stone wall. Evelyn knelt beside an old cabinet near the sink, searching through dusty drawers until she found faded cloth strips and a small bottle of alcohol that probably belonged to some ranger years ago. "This may sting," she warned gently as she moved beside him. Cale held out his injured arm without hesitation. Up close, Evelyn noticed how unusual he looked. There was nothing soft about him. Sharp jawline, broad hands marked with faint scars, eyes too intense to belong to an ordinary wolf. Even sitting still, he carried the kind of presence that filled an entire room without effort. Dangerous, yet strangely calm around her. Evelyn carefully peeled back the blood-soaked fabric near his shoulder. Her breath caught softly. Long claw marks stretched across his skin. Not fresh. Some were older scars layered beneath newer injuries. Cale watched her expression carefully. "You are not afraid?" Evelyn dipped the cloth into the alcohol bottle. "Should I be? Most people are." She cleaned the wound slowly while rain tapped softly against the cabin walls. Cale never flinched once. "I think," Evelyn said quietly after a moment, "people become afraid of what they do not understand." Silence lingered between them. Then Cale spoke in a lower voice. "And what do you think you understand about me?" Evelyn hesitated. "Not enough. Yet somehow more than she should. You protected me." Cale's silver eyes darkened slightly at the words. "That does not answer the question." Her fingers paused briefly against his shoulder. Warmth spread beneath her skin where she touched him. Strange warmth. Familiar somehow. "No," she admitted softly. "It does not." Cale studied her face for several long seconds, almost like he was searching for something hidden beneath her expression. Then suddenly his entire body went still. Completely still. Evelyn noticed instantly. "What is wrong?" Cale slowly lifted his head toward the broken cabin window. His jaw tightened. The calm atmosphere vanished, somehow terrified her more. In her bones. "You will not touch her." Silence followed immediately. Even the rogues looked uneasy now. Evelyn watched Cale carefully from behind him. His shoulders were tense beneath the black fabric of his shirt. Blood still stained one sleeve from the injury she treated earlier, yet he stood like the storm itself could not move him. The rogue leader's smile slowly disappeared. "You do not understand what she carries." Cale answered without hesitation. "Neither do you." The silver mark beneath Evelyn's collarbone pulsed again beneath the coat. Brighter this time. Every rogue in the doorway noticed instantly. Fear flashed across several faces. One of them took a step backward. "Moonborn," somebody whispered. Cale heard it too. His eyes closed briefly, almost like confirmation of something he desperately hoped was not true. Evelyn's pulse raced harder. "What does that mean?" she asked quietly. Cale turned toward her at last. The intensity in his gaze nearly stole her breath. "It means," he said carefully, "that if they take you tonight," his voice lowered, "every kingdom in the north will burn trying to find you." Before Evelyn could respond, a deafening howl erupted outside the cabin from somewhere deep within the forest. Then another answered. Then another. Cale's expression darkened instantly. They brought an entire rogue pack. The walls trembled softly beneath the sound echoing through the mountains. Evelyn's hands began shaking uncontrollably. Cale stepped closer to her without taking his eyes off the doorway. Listen to me carefully. His voice became quieter now, more personal. Whatever happens next, he moved slightly, shielding her fully behind his body again. Do not leave my side. The howls outside multiplied until the entire mountain seemed alive with them. Evelyn stood frozen near the fireplace, while shadows moved past the broken cabin windows like ghosts circling prey. Snow blew through the doorway in sharp spirals, carried by the rising storm. Cale did not move away from her for even a second. Every part of his attention remained fixed on the rogues outside. Calm, focused, dangerous. The rogue leader slowly stepped forward into the cabin. Entrance, raising both hands slightly as though trying to appear peaceful. We are not here to challenge your throne, Alpha King. Cale's expression never changed. Then leave before you do exactly that. The rogue hesitated. Fear flickered in his eyes again before he forced himself to continue. You do not understand what the Moonborn awakening means. Evelyn's stomach twisted harder at the strange word. Moonborn. The rogues kept looking at her like she was something they had searched for a very long time. Cale's voice lowered into something colder. I understand enough. Then you know others will come. The rogue glanced toward Evelyn carefully. The Eastern Kingdoms. The Royal Council. Even the old packs hidden beyond the border. Cale remained silent. Outside, another deep howl echoed through the storm. Much closer now. The rogue leader took another cautious step into the doorway. Give us the girl. We leave peacefully. The air inside the cabin changed instantly. Pressure rolled through the room so heavily it became difficult to breathe. Evelyn looked up sharply as Cale's silver eyes darkened almost to black. You do not get to ask me that twice. Even the storm outside seemed quieter after those words. The rogue leader slowly backed away, smart enough to recognize a line had been crossed. Cale's body remained tense beneath the dim moonlight pouring through the broken roof. Then suddenly his head turned toward the forest. Listening, Evelyn saw his jaw tighten sharply. More are coming, he muttered. A lot more. Fear crawled down her spine. What do we do? Cale looked at her fully for the first time since the rogues arrived. His expression softened slightly despite the danger surrounding them. We leave now. Where? North. He moved toward her quickly. There is a hidden pass nearly 2 miles from here. Once we cross the ridge, they will lose your scent in the snow. Evelyn stared at him in disbelief. You are helping me? Cale frowned slightly. You sound surprised. She swallowed hard. Nobody has chosen to help me in a very long time. Something unreadable flickered across his face at that confession. Quiet anger, maybe. Before he could answer, one of the cabin windows suddenly shattered inward from the force of the wind outside. Evelyn gasped, stepping back instinctively. The rogues were closing in around the cabin now. Their glowing eyes appeared through the darkness between the trees. Dozens of them. Cale grabbed her wrist gently but firmly. Warmth rushed through her skin instantly at the contact. Stay with me. He led her toward the rear door of the cabin just as heavy footsteps approached from the front entrance again. The rogue leader's voice echoed through the storm behind them. You cannot hide her forever, King Cale. Cale stopped briefly near the doorway. Without turning around, he answered in a calm voice that somehow carried through the entire forest. Watch me. The rear cabin door burst open into freezing wind and knee-deep snow. Evelyn shielded her face as the storm hit them full force. Cale stepped ahead of her immediately, scanning the dark mountain slope below. Can you run? Evelyn nodded despite the exhaustion pulling at every muscle in her body. Good. His hand tightened slightly around hers. Do not stop unless I tell you. They ran into the forest together beneath the blood moon, while distant howls erupted behind them almost instantly. Snow crunched beneath their boots as they moved between towering pines covered in ice. Cale stayed close enough that Evelyn could feel the heat radiating from him even through the freezing wind. Every few seconds he glanced behind them, listening carefully. Why are they calling me Moonborn? Evelyn asked breathlessly as they climbed the rocky trail. Cale stayed silent for too long. Because legends should have stayed buried. Her pulse quickened. That is not an answer. It is the only one I can give right now. Frustration mixed with fear inside her chest. Yet before she could press further, Cale stopped so suddenly she nearly collided with him. He pulled her behind him at once. Evelyn's breath caught. Dark figures stood ahead across the narrow mountain pass. More rogues. Waiting. Snow whipped violently between the trees while silence spread across the ridge. One rogue stepped forward slowly, lowering his hood. Silver scars crossed one side of his face. "You are too late, Your Majesty." Kale's entire body went rigid. "What have you done?" The rogue smiled faintly. "The council already knows the Moonborn has awakened." Evelyn's blood ran cold. Then the rogue's gaze shifted directly toward her. "And they are sending hunters." The words echoed through Evelyn's chest long after the rogue fell silent. Hunters. The royal council was sending hunters for her. Snow whipped violently across the narrow mountain pass, while Kale stood motionless in front of her, every line of his body rigid with controlled fury. The rogues ahead kept their distance now, not because they feared Evelyn, because they feared him. Kale slowly stepped forward. "Who gave the order?" The scarred rogue smiled faintly beneath the storm. "You already know the answer." Kale's silver eyes darkened. For one dangerous second, the air itself seemed heavier around him. Evelyn watched the rogues shift uneasily beneath his stare. One of them actually backed away. "The council believes the Moonborn should never have awakened." The scarred rogue continued carefully. "They will not allow her to reach the throne." Evelyn frowned. "What throne?" Nobody answered her immediately. Kale kept his attention fixed on the rogues. "You should leave before the storm buries this entire ridge." The scarred rogue hesitated. "We are trying to help you, Your Majesty." Kale finally laughed once under his breath. Cold. Sharp. "No. You are trying to survive." Silence followed. Then another distant howl echoed through the mountains behind them. Different this time. Organized. Disciplined. Kale recognized it instantly. His expression hardened. Royal trackers. The rogues reacted immediately. Fear flashed through the group before they disappeared back into the storm without another word. Within seconds, only swirling snow remained. Evelyn looked at Kale anxiously. "Your own hunters are coming after me." He finally turned toward her. Snow clung to his dark hair, while moonlight reflected sharply in his silver eyes. "They are not my hunters anymore." Something in the way he said it unsettled her deeply. Kale glanced toward the northern ridge. "We move now." Evelyn followed him. Through the mountain pass as wind screamed between the cliffs around them. Her legs trembled from exhaustion, but she forced herself forward. Kale stayed close enough to steady her whenever the icy trail became too steep. The storm worsened with every mile. Snow reached nearly 8 inches deep in some places, slowing their progress across the frozen ridge. Yet Kale moved through the blizzard like he belonged inside it. Strong, silent, certain. Evelyn studied him carefully while they climbed higher into the mountains. He had protected her since the moment they met, fought for her, chosen her safety over everything else. But now she understood exactly who walked beside her. The Alpha King himself, the most feared ruler in the Northern Territories. "Why are they hunting me?" she asked quietly after nearly an hour of silence. Kale did not answer right away. "Because some legends create hope." His voice lowered slightly. "Others create fear." Evelyn frowned harder. "That still tells me nothing." He slowed near the edge of the ridge, staring out across the snow-covered valley below them. Far in the distance, lights glowed faintly through the storm. A city. Massive walls stretched across the mountainside beneath towering black stone towers. Evelyn's breath caught softly. "What is that?" "Blackthorne Castle." Kale's expression remained unreadable as he watched the distant fortress. "My home." Evelyn stared at the enormous castle hidden beneath the storm clouds. The place looked ancient, powerful, untouchable. "We are going there." Kale nodded once. Fear twisted unexpectedly inside her chest. "Your council already wants me dead." "Yes." "Your hunters are searching for me." "Yes." Evelyn looked at him in disbelief. "Then why would we go there?" Kale finally turned toward her fully. Snow drifted between them beneath the pale moonlight. "Because it is the only place they cannot take you without starting a war." The words settled heavily in the freezing air. Evelyn wrapped the black coat tighter around herself. "I do not belong in a castle." Something softer flickered briefly across Kale's face. "Neither did I once." Before she could respond, a sharp pulse suddenly burned. Beneath her collarbone, Evelyn gasped quietly, pressing a hand against the glowing mark beneath her skin. Silver light flickered through her fingers. Stronger now. Warmer. Kale moved toward her instantly. "Evelyn." She looked up nervously. "It hurts." Kale's expression darkened with concern. Carefully, he reached for her wrist. The moment his fingers touched her skin, the The burning eased almost immediately. Both of them froze. Warmth spread through Evelyn's chest so suddenly it nearly stole her breath. Not ordinary warmth. Something deeper. Ancient. Familiar. Cale felt it too. She saw it in the sharp tension crossing his face. His silver eyes locked onto hers with dangerous intensity. That should not be happening, he whispered. Evelyn's heartbeat stumbled painfully. What does it mean? Cale stared at her for one long second before answering quietly. It means the bond recognizes me. The storm howled violently around them. Evelyn's pulse quickened. Bond. Cale's jaw tightened immediately, almost like he regretted saying the word out loud. Then suddenly his head snapped toward the forest below. His entire posture changed again. Alert. Protective. They found us. Evelyn turned sharply. Dark figures were emerging from the snow beneath the ridge. Dozens of armored wolves climbing toward them through the blizzard, carrying silver lanterns that glowed against the darkness. Royal hunters. Silver lanterns cut through the blizzard below like cold stars moving across the mountain. Evelyn counted at least 20 royal hunters climbing the ridge toward them, their dark cloaks whipping violently in the storm. The wolves moved with military precision. Organized. Ruthless. Cale's entire expression hardened the moment he saw them. They came faster than expected. Evelyn's pulse raced. What do we do? Cale looked toward the cliffs surrounding the ridge, calculating distances instantly. Snow gathered across his dark hair, while icy wind tore through the mountains around them. There is another path into Blackthorne beneath the eastern cliffs. He grabbed her hand firmly. Stay close. They moved quickly across the narrow ridge while the hunters advanced below. Evelyn struggled to keep her footing on the frozen trail. More than once, Cale caught her before she slipped against the ice. His hand never left hers. The strange warmth between them remained stronger now, pulsing softly beneath her skin every time he touched her. Behind them, a commanding voice suddenly echoed through the storm. Alpha King Cale. Both of them stopped briefly. A tall hunter stepped forward below the ridge carrying a silver spear marked with royal symbols. His hood fell back enough for Evelyn to see sharp gray eyes and a long scar crossing one side of his jaw. Commander Reese, Cale said quietly. The hunter lowered his weapon respectfully. Your Majesty. Cale's expression remained unreadable. You should not have come. Commander Reese glanced toward Evelyn. Not cruelly. Carefully. The council ordered us to secure the girl before sunrise. Cale stepped slightly in front of her immediately. She is under my protection. Tension spread across the mountainside. The hunters exchanged uneasy glances beneath the storm. Nobody challenged him directly, yet nobody retreated either. Reese spoke carefully. The elders believed the Moonborn awakening could destroy the balance between kingdoms. Cale's silver eyes darkened. The elders fear losing control. Silence followed. Snow drifted between both sides while distant thunder rolled across the valley below. Evelyn looked at the hunters again. None of them appeared bloodthirsty. Most actually looked nervous. Afraid even. Afraid of her. I do not understand any of this, she whispered. Cale glanced back at her briefly, his expression softening for only a second. I know. Reese took another slow step forward. Your Majesty, if she reaches Blackthorne Castle, the council will treat it as an act of rebellion. Cale answered without hesitation. Then they should prepare themselves accordingly. Several hunters stiffened at the quiet threat hidden beneath his words. Reese exhaled heavily. You would risk civil war for one rejected Luna? Cale's jaw tightened sharply. Evelyn felt his grip on her hand tighten too. Be careful what title you use for her. The commander noticed immediately. His eyes narrowed slightly as realization crossed his face. No, Reese murmured. The bond already started? Evelyn's heartbeat stumbled. Cale stayed silent this time. That silence told the hunters everything. Unease spread visibly through the group. One younger hunter whispered something under his breath. Another slowly lowered his lantern. Reese stared directly at Evelyn now, not with hatred but disbelief. The legends were true. Evelyn shook her head anxiously. Please stop talking like I am some kind of curse. The commander's expression changed slightly at her voice. Surprise maybe. She probably did not sound the way he expected. Broken. Frightened. Human. Cale stepped closer beside her. She is not a curse. Reese looked back toward the Alpha King carefully. Then tell me what she is. Cale's silence stretched too long. Wind screamed through the cliffs around them, while snow covered the ridge in silver shadows. Finally, Kale spoke in a low voice. The last Moonborn queen disappeared over 200 years ago during the Wolf Wars. Evelyn stared at him. Queen. Kale's gaze slowly returned to hers. Something almost painful moved behind his silver eyes now. The Moonborn line carried the original royal blood of the North. Her breath caught softly. That is impossible. It was supposed to be. Rhys lowered his head slightly. The council believed the bloodline ended forever. Evelyn's thoughts spun wildly. Rejected Luna. Broken Omega. That was who she had always been. Nothing more. Yet everyone around her suddenly looked at her like history itself had stepped out of the dark. A sharp pulse suddenly burned beneath her collarbone again. Stronger than before. Evelyn gasped softly, pressing her hand against the glowing mark beneath her skin. Silver light flickered through the storm around her fingers. Every hunter froze instantly. Kale moved toward her at once. Evelyn. The moment his hand touched hers, the glowing mark flared brightly between them both. Snow lifted from the ground around their feet in swirling silver light. Rhys stared in complete shock. One of the hunters dropped his lantern directly into the snow. Kale looked down at their joined hands, his expression changing instantly from concern to realization. Then slowly, very slowly, he lifted his eyes back to Evelyn. The moon goddess. His voice almost disappeared beneath the storm. She chose you. The silver light vanished as suddenly as it appeared, leaving only the sound of the storm tearing through the mountains. Nobody moved. The royal hunters stood frozen across the ridge, staring at Evelyn like they were witnessing a ghost rise from the dead. Her breathing shook violently. The mark beneath her collarbone still burned beneath her skin, warm and alive. Kale remained beside her, his hand wrapped firmly around hers. He had not let go. Commander Rhys slowly lowered his head. Not in fear. Respect. Moon goddess protect us? One hunter whispered behind him. Evelyn stared at them in disbelief. Hours ago, she had been rejected publicly by her own pack. Mocked. Humiliated. Forgotten. Now royal hunters looked at her like she carried the fate of kingdoms inside her veins. It did not feel real. Kale finally stepped forward, positioning himself slightly in front of her again. Protective by instinct now. You saw enough. Rhys lifted his eyes carefully. The council must be informed immediately. Kale's expression turned cold. No, the single word cut through the blizzard harder than the wind itself. Tension spread across the ridge again. Rhys straightened slowly. Your Majesty, if the elders discover we concealed the awakening, the elders do not decide her fate. Kale's voice carried quiet authority that silenced everyone instantly. Evelyn looked at him sharply. Her fate. Not the kingdom's. Not the council's. Hers. Kale glanced back toward her briefly, and something softened in his silver eyes before disappearing again beneath control. Rhys noticed it too. The commander exhaled slowly, almost tired. The bond is already forming. Kale did not deny it this time. Evelyn's pulse quickened painfully. Stop talking about me like I am not standing here. Rhys immediately lowered his head respectfully. Forgive me. She frowned slightly in surprise. Nobody from royal territory had probably apologized to an Omega in years. Maybe ever. Kale studied her face carefully beneath the storm. You should know the truth before we reach Blackthorne. Evelyn swallowed hard. Then tell me. Kale hesitated for the first time since meeting her. Real hesitation. The Moonborn queens were once guardians of the Northern Throne. His voice remained calm, though tension tightened every word. Their bloodline carried abilities tied directly to the moon goddess herself. Evelyn listened silently while snow drifted across the ridge around them. 2 centuries ago, Kale continued, the royal bloodline vanished during the Wolf Wars. The kingdoms nearly destroyed each other trying to control the last Moonborn heir. Commander Rhys looked grim beside him. After the wars ended, the elders erased almost every record of them. Evelyn's chest tightened slowly. Because they were afraid. Kale's eyes locked onto hers. Yes. Silence stretched between them again. The storm had started calming slightly now, though icy wind still swept through the cliffs. Evelyn looked down at her trembling hands. I am not a queen. Her voice came out smaller than intended. I was rejected by my own mate less than a day ago. Kale stepped closer without thinking. That does not define you. The words hit harder than they should have. Evelyn looked up sharply. Nobody had defended her since the ceremony. Nobody except him. Rhys cleared his throat carefully. Your Majesty, The council will never allow this quietly. Kale's jaw tightened again. I know. Several elders already oppose your rule. I know. If they believe the Moonborn has bonded to you. Kale cut him off immediately. Enough. The command echoed sharply through the ridge. Every hunter fell silent at once. Evelyn's heartbeat stumbled again. Bonded to him. The words stayed trapped inside her thoughts long after nobody spoke them aloud anymore. Kale slowly turned toward the valley below where Blackthorne Castle stood hidden beyond the storm. Its black towers pierced the mountains like ancient shadows beneath the moonlight. We leave now, he said quietly. Rhys hesitated. What should we tell the council? Kale's expression became unreadable once more. Cold king. Ruthless ruler. The side of him the kingdoms feared. Tell them, he said calmly, that the Alpha King has returned to his throne. Even the hunters straightened at those words. Kale looked back toward Evelyn then, and his entire expression changed again. Softer. More dangerous somehow. Personal. And tell them this. His fingers tightened slightly around her hand. Any wolf who comes near her without my permission. The storm seemed to hold its breath around them. Kale's silver eyes darkened beneath the moonlight. Answers to me. Silence crashed across the ridge. Rhys stared at him for several seconds before slowly bowing his head. Not to a king this time. To a decision already made. Evelyn felt her pulse trembling beneath her skin as Kale turned beside her again. The snow finally began to settle around them in soft silver waves. Then far below the mountains, the massive gates of Blackthorne Castle slowly opened through the storm. Blackthorne Castle rose from the mountains like something carved from winter itself. Massive stone walls towered above the snowy cliffs while silver torches burned along the outer gates, glowing against the darkness before dawn. Evelyn stood frozen at the edge of the bridge leading toward the fortress, overwhelmed by the sheer scale of it. Wolves lined both sides of the entrance in black armor marked with the royal crest. Every eye followed her the moment she stepped beside Kale. Some looked shocked, others uneasy, a few openly fearful. Kale never slowed his pace. His hand remained firmly wrapped around hers as they crossed the bridge together beneath the pale moonlight. The enormous gates groaned open completely the moment he approached. No one questioned him. No one dared. Yet whispers spread instantly through the courtyard as soon as the guards noticed the silver glow faintly pulsing beneath Evelyn's collarbone. It is true. The Moonborn returned. She is beside the king. Evelyn lowered her eyes, suddenly painfully aware of the torn gray dress beneath Kale's coat and the dried mud still clinging to her boots. Less than 24 hours ago, she had been discarded by her own pack like she meant nothing. Now an entire kingdom stared at her in silence. Kale guided her through the castle entrance without releasing her hand once. The warmth between them had grown stronger during the journey down the mountain. Every time their skin touched, the strange bond beneath her chest responded instantly. Alive. Watching. Waiting. The great hall of Blackthorne Castle was breathtaking. Silver chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings nearly 40 feet above them, while enormous windows overlooked the snow-covered cliffs outside. Ancient banners marked with wolf sigils lined the walls beside rows of nobles and royal guards who had clearly been dragged from sleep by the sudden arrival of their king. The room fell completely silent the moment Kale entered. Then the council doors opened. 7 elders dressed in dark ceremonial robes stepped into the hall with controlled expressions. At their center stood an older woman with sharp silver eyes and long white hair braided down her back. Queen Mother Selene, Kale's mother. Her gaze landed on Evelyn immediately. Cold. Calculating. The Queen Mother descended the stairs slowly without looking away from her once. So the rumors were true. Kale's posture hardened slightly beside Evelyn. Careful. Selene ignored the warning entirely. A rejected Luna appears beneath the blood moon carrying the lost royal mark. Her eyes narrowed. Convenient. Evelyn's chest tightened painfully. Even here, inside the royal castle, the word rejected followed her like a shadow. Kale stepped fully in front of her before Selene could move closer. You will address her respectfully. The entire hall went still. Nobody spoke to the Queen Mother that way. Yet Kale did not hesitate. Selene studied her son carefully. You are emotionally compromised already. Kale's silver eyes darkened. I am protecting someone under my authority. No, Selene glanced briefly toward Evelyn's glowing collarbone. You are bonding. Murmurs spread instantly through the hall. Evelyn's pulse raced. Cale stayed silent, which only confirmed the accusation further. One elder stepped forward nervously. Your Majesty, if the Moonborn line truly returned, the kingdoms will demand proof. Another elder looked openly alarmed. The Eastern Territories may declare war before winter ends. Evelyn's breathing became uneven. War, kingdoms, ancient bloodlines. None of this belonged to her world. She wanted to disappear beneath the weight of every stare in the room. Cale sensed it instantly. Without taking his eyes off the council, he reached behind him and gently pulled Evelyn closer beside him. A simple movement. Protective. Possessive. The bond beneath her skin pulsed warmly at once. Several nobles gasped softly when silver light flickered between their joined hands. Queen Mother Celine noticed too. For the first time, uncertainty crossed her expression. Cale slowly turned toward the gathered council. His voice became calm again. Deadly calm. Listen carefully. The hall fell silent instantly. Evelyn Ashford entered this castle under my protection. His fingers tightened slightly around hers. Any threat against her, his silver eyes swept across the nobles one by one, will be treated as a threat against the crown itself. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The Alpha King had just drawn a line before the entire kingdom. Celine stared at her son in disbelief. Cale? He looked back toward Evelyn then, and every trace of the ruthless king softened for one impossible second beneath the moonlight pouring through the windows behind them. Evelyn felt her heartbeat trembling beneath her ribs as he lifted his hand slowly toward the glowing mark beneath her collarbone. Warm fingers brushed gently against her skin. The silver light immediately flared brighter across the entire hall. Gasps echoed everywhere. Then Cale spoke the words that changed everything forever. The moon goddess has chosen. Silence crashed through Blackthorne Castle. And for the first time in her life, Evelyn no longer felt rejected at all.